Bron Breakker just crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. The advocate, the special counsel, the wise man himself, Paul Heyman, has just been speared in half by the most destructive force in WWE today. And if you think this is just another wrestling angle, you need to understand something right now. This changes everything about the power structure in WWE, and I'm about to tell you exactly why this attack has sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling industry. What we witnessed wasn't just a spear. It wasn't just another beatdown. This was a calculated assassination of the most protected figure in professional wrestling. Paul Heyman, the man who stands beside Roman Reigns, the man who has been untouchable for years, just got obliterated by a 26-year-old psychopath who doesn't care about politics, doesn't care about consequences, and definitely doesn't care about the tribal hierarchy that has dominated WWE for the past 4 years. Let me paint you the picture of what went down, because this moment is going to be replayed for decades. Bron Breakker, the second-generation destroyer, the son of Rick Steiner and nephew of Scott Steiner, stood in that ring with a look in his eyes that can only be described as unhinged. The crowd was electric, the tension was suffocating, and Paul Heyman, dressed in his signature suit, was doing what he does best, talking his way through a dangerous situation. But here's the thing about Bron Breakker that makes him different from every other WWE superstar: he doesn't care about words. Heyman was in the middle of one of his legendary speeches, probably trying to negotiate, probably trying to use his silver tongue to manipulate the situation like he's done 1,000 times before. But Breakker? He was done listening. He was done playing games. And in one explosive moment that felt like it happened in slow motion and at light speed simultaneously, Breakker charged across that ring like a freight train that's lost its brakes and delivered the most devastating spear we've seen in years. The impact was sickening. Heyman's body folded like a lawn chair. His glasses went flying. His phone shattered on the canvas. And for a moment, just a brief, terrifying moment, the entire arena went silent because everyone realized they just witnessed something that felt too real. This wasn't a worked punch or a safe wrestling move, this was Bron Breakker legitimately destroying a 60-year-old man who has never been touched like this in his entire career. Now let's talk about why this matters, because I know some of you are thinking it's just wrestling, it's just a storyline. But you're wrong. This attack represents the single biggest threat to the Bloodline's dominance that we've seen since Roman Reigns became the tribal chief. Paul Heyman isn't just some manager, he's the architect of Roman's entire empire. He's the mouthpiece, the strategist, the political mastermind who has kept Roman at the top of WWE for over 1,400 days. And Bron Breakker just sent a message that says, I don't care about your bloodline, I don't care about your legacy, and I definitely don't care about your wiseman. Think about the implications here. For years, we've watched superstars tiptoe around Paul Heyman because attacking him meant facing the wrath of Roman Reigns and the bloodline. It meant dealing with Solo Sikoa, Jimmy USO, GUSO before he left, and the entire Samoan dynasty. But Bron Breakker just kicked that door down and said, bring it all on. This kid, and yes, at 26 he's still basically a kid in this business, just declared war on the most powerful faction in WWE history. And here's what makes this even more insane: Bron Breakker isn't some veteran who's earned his stripes and paid his dues over 20 years. He's been in WWE for barely 3 years. He came up through NXT, destroyed everyone in his path, won the NXT championship twice, and then got called up to the main roster where he's been an absolute wrecking ball ever since. This man has the pedigree, the intensity, and the raw violence that reminds people of his uncle Scott Steiner in his prime, mixed with the athleticism and speed that makes him unlike anything we've ever seen. Let's break down what happened moment by moment because this is going to be analyzed and dissected for months. Breakker's music hit, and you could feel the energy shift immediately. He stormed down that ramp with purpose, with intent. His eyes were locked on Heyman from the second he appeared on the stage. Heyman, being the master manipulator he is, tried to backpedal, tried to use words as his shield. But Breakker rolled into that ring, and you could see in Heyman's face that he knew words weren't going to save him this time. Heyman tried to reason with him, probably offering him opportunities, probably mentioning Roman's name like it was supposed to make Breakker back down. But here's what separates Bron Breakker from everyone else on the roster: fear doesn't exist in his vocabulary. He doesn't get intimidated by names or legacies or threats. He's a pit bull who only knows one direction, and that's forward. The spear itself needs to be studied in wrestling schools. The way Breakker loaded up, the explosion of power from his legs, the way he drove through Heyman's body and not just into it, this is what separates a regular spear from a Bron Breakker spear. Goldberg had power, Edge had technique, Roman has perfected the timing, but Breakker? He has this unique combination of all three plus the reckless abandon of someone who genuinely doesn't care about his own body, which makes him willing to hit harder than anyone else. When Heyman hit that mat, the sound echoed through the arena. Medical staff rushed the ring immediately, and here's what makes this feel so real: Heyman sold it like his ribs were broken. He wasn't popping right back up for a promo or a comeback moment. He was down, clutching his midsection, gasping for air like a man who just got hit by a car. And Breakker? He stood over him with this cold, emotionless expression that said, this is just the beginning. Now let's talk about the fallout from this, because Roman Reigns isn't going to let this slide. The tribal chief has built his entire empire on fear, respect, and the understanding that if you touch what's his, you face consequences. Paul Heyman is his most valuable asset, his most trusted advisor, and now Bron Breakker has violated the trust in the most physical way possible. This isn't like when Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn had their issues with the bloodline. Those were personal, those were about family dynamics and betrayal. This is different. This is a young lion walking into the den of the alpha wolf and saying your time is up. The WWE universe is divided on this right now, and that's what makes it so compelling. You've got one side saying finally, someone with the guts to stand up to the bloodline without fear. You've got the other side saying Bron Breakker just signed his own death warrant, and both sides have valid points. Yes, it's refreshing to see someone attack the bloodline's power structure without hesitation, but at what cost? What happens when Roman Reigns gets his hands on Breakker? What happens when Solo Sikoa decides to make an example out of him? But here's the genius of this whole situation: Bron Breakker might be the only person on the roster who can survive this. Think about it. He's built like a tank, he moves like a cruiserweight, he hits like a heavyweight, and most importantly, he has the wrestling pedigree that demands respect. The Steiner family is royalty in this business. His father and uncle were the most dominant tag team of their era, and Scott Steiner went on to become one of the most feared singles competitors in WCW history. Breakker has that same DNA, that same intensity, that same I'll break your face and not lose a second of sleep mentality. What's even more interesting is the timing of this attack. We're heading into WrestleMania season, which means every move, every angle, every assault has major implications for the biggest show of the year. Is this WWE's way of setting up Bron Breakker versus Roman Reigns? Are they building toward a new face of the company? Is Breakker being positioned as the future while Roman's reign finally comes to an end? The possibilities are endless, and that's what has the wrestling community buzzing right now. Some people are saying this was too soon, that Breakker needed more time to develop, more credibility before going after the bloodline, but I completely disagree. WWE has a history of striking while the iron is hot, and right now, Bron Breakker is the hottest thing in professional wrestling. Every time he's on screen, something memorable happens. Every match he's in becomes an instant classic. Every promo he cuts feels real and unscripted. This is the exact right time to shoot him to the stratosphere. Let's also acknowledge Paul Heyman's role in making this moment feel so significant. The man is a legend in this business, a Hall of Famer multiple times over, and someone who has been the voice of multiple generations of wrestling. His ability to sell that spear, to make it feel like a career-threatening injury, to make the audience genuinely concerned for his well-being, that's the mark of a true professional. Heyman could have no-sold it, could have bounced back immediately, but instead, he made Bron Breakker look like an absolute monster. And that's the story WWE is telling here. Bron Breakker is a monster. He's not a hero, he's not a villain in the traditional sense, he's a force of nature. He's the tornado that destroys everything in its path without malice, without emotion, just pure destructive energy. That's what makes him so compelling and so dangerous. You can't negotiate with a tornado, you can't reason with an earthquake, and you can't talk your way out of a Bron Breakker assault. The social media reaction to this has been insane. Twitter is exploding, Instagram is flooded with replays and reactions, YouTube is getting crushed with breakdown videos, and wrestling forums are working overtime trying to predict what happens next. Some fans are calling this the moment that changes WWE forever, others are already booking fantasy matches between Breakker and every top star on the roster. The engagement is through the roof, and that's exactly what WWE wanted. Now here's my prediction for where this goes, and you can screenshot this and come back in a few months to see if I'm right. I think WWE is positioning Bron Breakker as the man to finally dethrone Roman Reigns, but not at WrestleMania, at SummerSlam. I think they're going to spend the next several months building this war, having Breakker systematically destroy everyone associated with the bloodline, proving that he's not afraid of anyone or anything. We'll see battles with Solo Sikoa, possibly reunited Usos trying to protect their family, and eventually, the final showdown with Roman Reigns himself. But more importantly than any prediction, this moment proves that WWE still knows how to create must-see television. In an era where everything feels overbooked and predictable, they gave us a moment of pure shock and violence that felt real. They gave us a reason to tune in next week, to see how Roman responds, to see if Heyman is okay, to see what Bron Breakker does next. That's storytelling at its finest. The reality is, whether you love Bron Breakker or hate him, whether you think this was genius or too soon, you cannot look away now. He's forced himself into the main event conversation with one single spear. He's made himself must-see TV. And in this business, that's all that matters. The ability to make people care, to make them react, to make them tune in every single week to see what happens next. Bron Breakker has that ability, and he just proved it in the most violent way possible. So what happens next? How does the bloodline respond? Will Roman Reigns appear next week for revenge? Will Paul Heyman be able to continue his role, or is this the beginning of the end for the Wiseman? Will Bron Breakker face consequences from WWE management, or are they going to let this young bull continue charging through the China shop? These are the questions keeping wrestling fans up at night, and that's exactly what WWE wants. One thing is absolutely certain: Bron Breakker isn't going anywhere. He's here to stay, he's here to dominate, and he's here to prove that the future of WWE isn't about respect, it's not about acknowledgement, it's about violence, intensity, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to reach the top. Paul Heyman just learned that lesson the hard way, and everyone else on the roster better be paying attention because they could be next. This is the beginning of something special, something dangerous, something that's going to define WWE for the next decade. Bron Breakker versus the Bloodline isn't just another feud, it's a revolution. It's the old guard being forced to acknowledge the new generation, whether they want to or not. And based on what we just witnessed, that acknowledgement is going to come with a heavy price. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think Bron Breakker went too far, or is this exactly what WWE needed? Who do you want to see him destroy next? And most importantly, can anyone stop this man before he tears through the entire roster? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications because the fallout from this is going to be explosive. Wrestling News CC will keep you updated on every single development in this story, and trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. This is just the beginning of the Bron Breakker era, and Paul Heyman was just the first victim.